The purpose of this interview is to document the experience of a Marine during World War II and the battles of the South Pacific Islands. Our themes for this interview will include entrance into the service, their job in the military, battles throughout the South Pacific, and the life after service. Our interview is being recorded for the Veterans Oral History Project with Paul Wilbur, a former member of the U.S. Marine Corps. I'm the interviewer. My name is David Furtado. My partner in this project is Keyon Butler. Also in the room listening today is journalism instructor Jeffrey Hope. Instructor Larry Ayotte, is shooting video for our interview. Assisting Larry is Jacob Richards. And we are also joined by students Hannah Billings, Zach Hokamp, Nelson Perez, Zach Hewins, and Jesse Bundy. The date is April 11th, 2016, and we are at the New England School of Communications at Husson University. Mr. Wilbur, thank you for doing this interview with us. Could you please state your name, date of birth, and where you are from?
My name is Paul M. Wilbur, Paul Marshall Wilbur. My date of birth is January 30th, 1925. And I was born and brought up in Bangor. And I live in Herman at the moment. I've been out there now for 59 years. What else do you need to know?
Well, we have a whole slew of questions if you are ready to go.
Well, I'll tell you briefly where I come from.
Okay.
I was 16 years old when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7th of 41. But I turned 17 in January of 42, a month later. My father was a veteran of World War I, and I felt very strong. I was very patriotic back then, still am. And I spoke to my father about it, and I said, I feel like I hate to do it, but I should leave high school. And I want to join the Marine Corps and do what I can to help win this war with Japan. My father agreed with me, my mother didn't, but she come around after a while. And I left high school right after my birthday, January 30th of 1942, excuse me. And I signed up in the Marine Corps and I was sworn in on February 12th of 1942. And after my basic training, I was sent to the South Pacific to fight against the Japanese. And I was out there in the early part of 42. And I was there for not quite 3 years. And when the war was all over, well, it wasn't over actually, I come back just before Iwo Jima. I'd been through Guadalcanal, Bougainville, Tulagi, New Hebrides, and quite a few other campaigns. And now, you understand, I wasn't a frontline soldier. It takes about 6 or 7 people in the background to keep one soldier on the front lines. And I was a heavy truck driver. I drove heavy equipment, big 10-wheel trucks. I was short, very good, but that's the type of truck I drove back then. And I had my moments with that, as I was telling one of your boys. I was on Guadalcanal and driving a load of ammo down to the front lines, and when I had an artillery shell that was probably about that long, it was big around as that, it was supposed to explode when it hit something. And it went down the roof of my truck, went out the side window in front of my nose. And it was a dud, it didn't go off. Scat the pants off me, but other than that, I was fine. So, and I was there for the better part of, as I say, 3 years. And just before Iwo Jima, that was our next major campaign. That was the last island before Japan itself. I thought I had a picture of that. Yeah, I must have put it away.
Well, now that we have an overview of your time
but
in
it don't
service.
matter anyways. It was the last island before Japan itself.
Okay.
And we knew it was going to be a tough campaign. And so we was getting ready to invade that island, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, they told me I was going home. Well, I'd been there close to 3 years, so I was ready to go home. I really was. And so I missed Iwo Jima. Had I gone there, I probably wouldn't be here today. There was a pretty good chance I would. My outfit went on there, and most of them was killed on Iwo Jima. We lost over 6,000 troops taking that one island. And we was 35 days before we finally got control of that island of Iwo Jima. So I was very fortunate that I wasn't there, really. Well, I was home, and I'd been on leave, and I went back down to South Carolina getting ready to ship back overseas when they decided to invade Japan itself. President Roosevelt had passed away, and Truman was now our president. And he notified the Emperor of Japan that the United States had developed an atom bomb. And he asked for his surrender, and the Emperor decided no, he wasn't going to surrender. So they dropped the first atom bomb on Hiroshima. And that killed thousands and thousands and thousands of Japanese people, men, women, and children. So we approached the Emperor the second time and asked for his surrender again. He said no. So the second time, they dropped the second bomb on Nagasaki. And when they dropped that bomb, Japan surrendered and the war was over. Well, I was down in South Carolina getting ready to ship back overseas again to rejoin what was left of my outfit when all that happened. And they, in that case, I've got a paper of the Japanese surrender, and I was going to show that to you, but it's still in that case somewhere. But anyways, after they surrendered, I finished out my 4 years, and I was debated about, they offered me, I was a corporal, I had 2 stripes, they offered me a 3rd stripe to sign up for another 4 years. And I gave it a lot of thought. I got 4 years in already, and I could try to retire at 20. But I decided I didn't want to make the military a career. I wanted to get back on, get home, and get on with my life. So I did. I took my military discharge down in South Carolina, and I hitchhiked back to Maine. I went back to high school and finished my high school education. I had a year or 2 to go. And while I was there, I met this cute senior. And we got going together, and she graduated that year. I got back, and the next year I graduated, and we got married. We've been married now, let me see, October 23rd will be 68 years. And we had 2 boys in my marriage, and my boys had a boy and girl each, so I have 4 grandchildren, and right now I got 7 great-grandchildren. And I got 1 more on the way. I was informed yesterday. And I got 2 girls, and the rest are all boys. And the one that coming is a boy, too. And she's given up. She had 2 boys, and she's got the 3rd one now. So she says, that's it. So I have, that'll be 8 grandchildren, or great-grandchildren, excuse me. So I've had a good life, and I have no complaints, none, not whatsoever. If I had to do all over, I'd do the same thing again. I volunteer at Coal Museum. I started with, Galen Cole and I was in the same class at Bangor High School, the class of 1944. In fact, Sue Cole, his wife, was Sue Welch then. We had the same homeroom. And good friends, very good friends. And I volunteer at Coal. I'm the senior veteran at Coal Museum right now. I've been there now for over 25 years. And I've volunteered, and we interview students. They bring in students from all over the state of Maine. We've had them from Kittery to Fort Kent. And we try to impress on the students the love of country, respect for flag and elders, and it's just a marvelous program. I've interviewed something around 3,000 or 4,000 youngsters myself. That's a stack of just a few I've interviewed. These are my dog tags. My dog tags are different than what you see today. It has my name, my serial number, and it has when I had my tetanus shot and my blood type, and the branch of service I was in. And on the back side of mine is a fingerprint. You don't see that on dog tags today. And I put that the original chain that they gave me the day I got these on February 12th of 42. When I put that around my neck, I never took it off for 4 years. When the war was all over, and I come back home, I took that off and I put it in my dresser drawer and it stayed there until I got involved at Coal Museum. And this is my Marine Corps emblem. That's what that looks like. So that's basically my story.
So now that we have an overview of your life in general, we're going to kick it back to the beginning to really get a sense of what it was like before the war. So my first question is, what was the atmosphere like before in the war and around the attacks of Pearl Harbor, and how did it change?
Well, you wouldn't believe how people come together. After the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, and all of a sudden we're at war with Japan. I mean, everybody pitched in. Everybody, men, women, and children, pitched in to do what they could to prepare us for war, because we wasn't ready for war at that time. I mean, we really wasn't. I mean, World War I was supposed to wind up wars, but of course it hasn't. Probably never will, but everybody pitched in, and I know I felt very strongly about it. That's why I did what I did. And if I had to do all over again, I'd do the same thing again. I mean, my mother, she worked in the Bangor Filter Center. I don't know exactly what they did. I have no idea. But everybody done what they could to help win the war. The women worked in the factories to build arms and to fight the war with. The children, they'd done all they could. They went around and picked up what they could that could be used to build arms with. I mean, it was a united effort. The United States, everywhere. Excuse me.
You talked about how when you enlisted, you had to talk to your parents about it. What was that conversation like between you and your father getting ready to, asking for permission to join the military?
It was pretty basic. I just told my dad, I said, I just feel that I should do what I could to help win the war there, that's all. And I feel that I'd like to leave high school and join the Marine Corps. It's when I turn 17. I can do that with your permission. And he agreed. And then we had to talk my mother into it, that's all. And it took a while, but she did. She relented, and she signed, they both signed the papers. And so it was a relatively easy task.
So why did you choose the branch you enlisted in over all the other branches?
Well, I have a lot of respect for the Marine Corps. Did even before I joined, I did. And I just felt that was the branch that I wanted, rather than the Army or the Navy. And although the Navy has moved us around, they took care of us real well.
Once you enlisted, you went to, obviously, for basic training. Where were you stationed?
Parris Island, South Carolina.
It's a quick answer.
Yeah.
All right, so then what stood out most to you about basic training? Throughout your whole basic course?
The discipline and of course I had an advantage over some of them perhaps. I had ROTC at Bangor High School, and so at least I knew my left foot from my right foot, which is a big advantage. It really was. And it's just a lot of work. I mean, basic training is marching, discipline, all the stuff that goes with basic training. I mean, the DIs they had no mercy on you whatsoever. I mean, they worked your tail right off. I mean, they really did. But I don't know what else to say, really.
And then after basic, you went out to the South Pacific from there?
I went right across country, and we went to the wood ship and started across, and the convoy I was in, it was interesting. The convoy I was in, our ship broke down, and they had to leave the convoy, and the convoy couldn't wait, of course. The rest of the ships went on, and they left one ship with us to take care of us until we got geared up and going again. It was a while, and we finally got going again, and they said that we were on a zigzag course at that time. They went so far this way and so far this way for so many minutes, because they said it took just so much time for them to line up torpedoes on a ship. And they said they had a submarine on our tail. And whether it was German or Japanese, I couldn't say. Probably Japanese, I would suspect, because we wasn't involved in Germany at that time. I was overseas for almost 2 years before we got involved over in Europe. And I never got over there at all. And so it was quite a while getting across where we were supposed to go, and I ended up in New Caledonia. And I was in New Caledonia for a very short time before we went to Guadalcanal. It was the first campaign that I went in on. And I was not on the first wave at Guadalcanal, I was in the second wave that went ashore. And but it's interesting when you invade one of these islands like Bougainville. I was in the first wave that went ashore on Bougainville. And when you're aboard those ships and they laid offshore all the battle wagons and battle cruisers and all the ships, they sailed that island for like 72 hours day and night. Those big guns never stopped. That's where I lost a lot of my hearing right there. That's why I wear hearing aids today, I'm sure. And when those big guns, they'd knock you right off your feet, they're so loud. And they shelled that island for like 2 or 3 days before they finally sent planes in to dive bomb it. Excuse me. And when they finally did, that's when we climbed over the side of these rope nets hanging over the side of the ships into these LSTs. These are the times that go ashore, the front end drops down, and troops go in. And you're usually in water anyways, from up to your knees to your waist. They get as close to the shore as they can, of course. And when we started ashore, and all that shelling and all the dive bombing, then no more started ashore. They started artillery coming from the mainland into in fact, one of these landing crafts that I was in, one on either side of the one I was on, had direct hits on it. It was sunk out in the bay. And how many of them men made it ashore, I couldn't say, but mine made it ashore along with many others. And there's probably 60 or 70 of these went ashore with troops. And when we started up across the island, we had to get across the beaches, and there was long, wide beaches. The beaches were probably 200, 300, 400 feet wide or better before you got into the jungle area where you had some protection. And we start across those beaches, and we look up, and here comes a whole squadron of Japanese Zeros. These are small fighter planes coming down that beach with machine guns going full boat, and they're using a 50 caliber machine gun bullet. This bullet's about yay long, and it's big around as that. And you have no place to go. All you could do is crawl down in the sand, and if anybody tells you they weren't scared, they're lying to you. As soon as they went by, you're on your feet again, and a lot of the boys got hit and a lot didn't. I was one that didn't. And as soon as they went by, as I say, you get on your feet and you head towards that jungle area, and you finally reach it where you got some protection. And it took us about a week or 10 days to conquer the island of Bougainville. And they estimated 30,000 Japanese on the island of Bougainville. And they had been fortifying that island for years. So and that's the way it was with all the islands all the way up through. They had been fortifying those islands for a long, long time, and they was well protected. But anyways, we finally got through that campaign, and we went to the next one, and so forth.
Now, when you went to Bougainville, What was like the sights? What did you see? What did you smell? That kind of stuff. Was it very, very unique and very impact heavy when it comes to like the sensory areas?
It was jungle area. Of course, now we're right around the tropics, right around the hottest part of the country. I mean, the temperature there most of the time was around 80 to 100 degrees. So nobody was ever cold. And it was jungle area. And we had things to look out for. We had to be careful because we had several kinds of, like water moccasins, coral snakes. There was crocodiles. There was all kinds of spiders, scorpions. I mean, if you took your shoes off at night, you never put them on without shaking them out in the morning. You had all those things to be concerned about. I was on patrol one day and we had a snake that fell out of the trees. It was probably 12, 14 feet long. He wasn't poisonous, but he got your attention just the same. The natives on those islands were very good to us. We got along good with the natives. They liked us. They didn't like the Japanese because the Japanese was cruel back then. They were a very cruel race of people. And I don't know, it was a jungle area. I mean, it was like the tropics, a tropical area. And it was beautiful in some ways. I mean, the sunsets and sunrises were gorgeous. It'd been a paradise for an artist out here. See some of that stuff. But we have to be careful about a lot of things. I don't know really what to say too much.
I mean, you answered the question perfectly. What was your typical day like when you started getting to the islands?
Typical day was, well, usually working, making sure you're trying to secure the island and keep it secured, because we had Japanese were always trying to infiltrate our groups and one thing or another, and they had to look out for that. We worked hard in doing whatever we had to do. We had very little entertainment. Once in a while we had some troops from the States who would come out and put on a show for us for entertainment. I mean, we got a little of it, not too much. The food was, well, you lived with C rations and K rations and stuff like that until they get the island secured so they could set up field kitchens. They could feed you like your powdered eggs and all that good stuff, you know, that you didn't get out of a can.
So what are C rations and K rations for those of us who don't know?
What
are the C rations and K rations? I'm a little unsure on that.
There's cans of it would be like Spam today and stuff like that. And there's a package of crackers and a few cigarettes and things like that in there. I never smoked when I went in the service, but after I get in there, back then, they encouraged smoking. They really did. Everybody smoked back then, so I took it up and I was good at it.
So
I didn't smarten up on cigarettes until I was about 42, when I quit cold turkey one day. I decided, that's it, I've had it. And if I hadn't, I don't think I'd be here today. I'm 91 today. I was 91 back in January. And if I kept smoking away, I was smoking 2 packs a day. And if I hadn't quit when I did, I don't think I'd be here today. I really don't. But they don't encourage smoking in the service today, but back then they did. In fact, they packed cigarettes in our rations. So we had those along with whatever else we had. And these are one of the things they issued to us. That's a can opener to open those little cans with. They came with our rations. Before we had those, the only thing we had was a bayonet that went on the end of our rifle. It was about that long. Well, to open a little bit of can like that with a bayonet, just didn't cut it.
So You were a heavy equipment operator, correct?
I was a heavy equipment operator, yes. I drove big trucks.
So what exactly
Primarily,
did that entail?
and I'd done a lot of other stuff. I mean, I set up communications. They'd have a battery of equipment like a height finder, a range finder, a searchlight, and a radar, and they had to have communication between all those units. So when an air raid came in from Japan, and they picked them up, the radar would pick them up, and they synchronized all their dials and so forth, so they'd all, when the radar was on target, the searchlight and the height finder and the range finder the height finder would tell them how high they were flying, and the range finder would tell them how far away they were. And the searchlight would is a great big huge searchlight. I don't know how large this thing was big around as that. And when that come on, they would pick that plane right out of the air, and there'd be another one come on. They'd get them in cross beams. They couldn't get out of it, and then they could shoot them down. And they shot down thousands and thousands and thousands of Japanese bombers and so forth. They had a good system. They really did. And
you were part of the part of the group, excuse me, that helped put all those wires and communications together.
Yes, I set up I set the telephone lines, I set up the communication, set up the telephones and so forth between all those units, so that I did that in my spare time.
How much spare time did you exactly have between being a heavy equipment operator?
Well, I done whatever they wanted me to do. So, we had a lot of spare time. I mean, we really did. I mean, a lot of times you had nothing to do. We just sat around. We had a lot of rain out there, heavy storms, thunder showers, stuff like that. I know I was sitting around one day with a whole bunch of us nothing going on. And I was sitting on a tree stump about so tall, and we had a thunder shower going on. We had no place to go. You're right in it. So, and I had got up from that tree stump to go to speak to one of the boys about something, and I hadn't taken a full step from that tree stump when a bolt of lightning hit it and destroyed that stump completely. Just absolutely destroyed it. It knocked me out. I went out like a light, and when I come to, I was fine. I was all right. And the stump was gone. The stump was gone. But just a close call, that's all I can say. There's somebody up there looking after me, there's no question about it. I brought that, this is the Bible I carried. That was given to me by my church when I left. That was worn out. I used that a lot during the war. It's pretty well beat up. I still got it, and I don't know why, but I have. I've kept it all these years.
Speaking of back home stuff, because you said you got that from your church from back home. Did you have any correspondence back home while you were over there in the islands?
I had a few telegrams. Yes, I've got some in that case somewhere. I'm sure, because I show them with the kids sometimes when I'm talking to the children about things like that. These are some of the excuse me, some of the medals I received during the war. This one here is an American campaign medal here. This one here is a victory medal for World War II. This one here is an Asiatic Pacific Campaign medal, and this one over here is a good conduct medal. And the top part of this one here, this is on display over the Coal Museum. My uniform is on display at Coal, so it's the only Marine Corps uniform I have over there, as far as I know. And that one only got one stripe. It's supposed to have two stripes, but they never got around to it. These here are medal I received for my rifle. I was fired expert with the rifle. This here is what they call a ruptured duck. It was given to World War II veterans only. When they got out of the service, they was permitted to wear that on their civilian clothes, and anybody who saw a veteran with that on their clothes, they knew that they was a discharged veteran of World War II. That was only issued to World War II veterans. And this is just a Marine Corps emblem here. And I have that to show the kids. They always ask about those things.
So you talking about how you had the you talking about how you had a bunch of close calls, especially with the lightning bolt. What was the can you just walk me through what happened when the dud came through your truck when you were driving?
Well, the truck stopped right off quick, and I got out, and I was fine. Nothing happened really. I mean, other than the fact that that artillery shell didn't do what it was supposed to do. It was a dud. It didn't go off, but it went down through the roof of that truck right in front of my nose and out the side window. And as I say, other than the fact it scared the pants off me, I was fine.
Were you in a convoy with a bunch of other people?
No, I was all by myself. Just taking a load of supplies up to the front lines.
Did you tell anybody at the front lines what happened?
Oh yeah, they knew about it.
What was their reactions like?
Lucky I'd be there, that's all. I really was. I was lucky to be there. I was lucky in many instances. I was stringing telephone line at one of the areas I was in, and I had a pair of spikes on my feet that I used to climb a telephone pole with. And I was up probably 15 feet in one of those coconut palms, stringing telephone line. I was just getting ready to hook my safety belt around the tree to continue on with my lines when a Japanese sniper took a shot at me. And it hit my spike in this right leg, just the middle part of that spike, and it drove my leg out of the tree. And of course you don't stand there on one leg but a second. And down I went. And I was fine other than the fact it hit my back some when I fell, but I survived it. I got back up and finished my job. But I fight a bad back today because of that, I'm sure, or partially so. I'm 50% disabled with the Veterans Administration.
So you were going up through the islands. You had New Caledonia, and you went to Guadalcanal, you went to Bougainville. As you went through the islands, did it get progressively a little bit more difficult to secure each island?
No, not really, not really. They was all about the same. I mean, they always had a lot of troops in every one of them. A lot of troops. When I first went to get over there, I worked on a unit to they had barrage balloons around certain areas like Noumea, the capital of New Caledonia. They had barrage balloons. They run up in the air. There was a big balloon that was, and they needed gas, hydrogen gas, to float those balloons in the air. And they had a generator there. We used, let me think now, it's been a lot of years. We used caustic soda, ferrosilicon, and water, and they, in a great big huge cylinder, bigger than that, a big tall cylinder, probably 10 or 12 feet tall, and had a cover with threads on it about like that. They screwed on to the top of this, and then they had a whole series of bolts around it that fastened it down. And you had the ferrosilicon and the caustic soda in that cylinder, and then you put the water to it, and that created hydrogen gas, and you put that into tanks like you use for propane gas and stuff like that. And I generated hydrogen gas with that for, probably for several months before I went on to the islands.
So when you create hydrogen gas, it's kind of like there has to be a big safety protocol along the lines of, because it's very flammable and could explode.
Oh yes.
When you're doing the chemical reactions, did you have any mishaps?
No, we were very careful, very cautious. We followed the procedures as just we were supposed to.
And what procedures were there set in place?
Oh, do you mean for safety?
Yep.
Well, to make sure that all those bolts were fastened down tight, and and all that stuff, and then you had to use certain precautions when you fill the tanks from that gas that was produced. I mean, you took just the normal precautions you had to take, and that type of thing. And then those tanks went on to wherever they took them to fill up those big balloons that they run up on steel cables as big as my little finger. They'd run them up there so that in hopes if Japanese planes come in to bomb that island, which they never did, their planes hit one of those cables, they wouldn't see it. And of course, it would disable the plane, of course. But
So, as you moved up through the islands, you went through all these islands, and eventually you made it to the island just before Iwo Jima. And you said you were allowed to go home at that point.
yes,
What was the decision like to leave, to be able to decide to go home at that point?
when I was told I was the only one to ship out of my outfit at that time, the only one. I'd been over, I was perhaps the senior member in that outfit at that time. I'd been overseas longer than anybody else. And I wasn't the oldest, I had more time overseas than anybody else. And so I was just told I was going back home. I had a whole sea bag full of souvenirs that I had gathered up, and they're still out there as far as I know. When they told me I could go home, I just left. I didn't hang around.
And left all the stuff there?
I left the stuff right there.
If you had a chance to go back and get some of those mementos, would you go back and get them? Or?
No, I doubt it. I doubt it. I've thought there's a few times I would like to had some of them to show the kids. With these veteran interviews we go, but other than that, I would have no further use for them. I really wouldn't. I mean, just that stuff to show the children would be worthwhile. Some of it. I mean, they've done like, I don't know, flags and certain weapons, Japanese swords, stuff like that I had. But there'd be no value to me other than that.
Now, once you finished, you came home. You went back to South Carolina, and then from there you ended up hitchhiking home. What was that like? Meeting all these new people, driving you back all the way up to Maine.
You're coming back home, you mean?
Yep.
I had no trouble getting back home at all, because back then you could hitchhike easily, and I hitchhiked home from there. And I made I might have had 2 or 3 different rides, but they took me right to my house when I got back home. In fact, when I got home in the wee hours of the morning, and my folks had moved, and I wasn't sure exactly where they lived. I had an idea, but I wasn't sure. And my folks had never locked the house since I left to go into the service. And a fellow let me off the top of the street, and it was like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning when he dropped me off. He was a truck driver. And I grabbed my sea bag and I walked down the street, and I said to myself, I says, I think this is the right house, I'm not sure. I walked in, I went in the back door, it was unlocked. And I looked around, and there was some mail over on the sideboard over there. And I went and looked at it, it had my folks' name on it, so I said, well, I guess I'm at the right place. So they had a room off the kitchen, in between that and the dining room and the living room, and they had a couch over in the corner there, so I went over and laid down on the couch. And I dozed off. And along about 6 o'clock, I come to where I heard my father out in the kitchen. So I went out, stood in the doorway, and I said, good morning, Dad. Well, he had some choice words. Where in the hell did you come from? So I told him, and I said, I didn't want to disturb you that time of day. Well, it's wonderful to be home. Glad you're here. He was just getting ready to make a pan of biscuits or muffins or something. But it was good to be home. It really was. It was good to be home. Been a long time since I've been there.
What was it like when your mother saw you?
Oh, she couldn't get over it. She was just tickled to death. She really was. I mean, of course, we was a close family anyways. And, well, I don't know, it was just, the war was over, and I mean, we wasn't at war with anybody at that time when I got out, because this is before Vietnam and Korea, I mean, and Vietnam. We wasn't at war with anybody. The war was over. That was another reason I didn't sign up for another hitch, because we wasn't at war with anybody at that time. If I had signed up, I would have gone to Korea and Vietnam. And I was ready to get out at that time and get on with my life.
So what was like after the service? What was like for you, like going around town, that kind of stuff, running errands?
Yep, that type of thing. I started in a business of office machine business, servicing typewriters, calculators, mimeographs, duplicators, that type of thing. And I worked for Kinney Duplicator Company. They had an opening coming up in 3 or 4 months, so I went driving taxi cab in Bangor until that opening came up. And then I went to work for them. And I stayed with them until, for 16 years, I guess. And then I left them and I went to Gas Office Products in Bangor. And I stayed with Julie Gas until he sold the business. And after he sold that business, I opened my own business. And I run that for 8 years, and I sold that out to Transco Distributors in Augusta. And I stayed with them till I retired at 62. And since then, I've enjoyed life, pretty much. I do a lot of volunteer work. I delivered meals for me. I worked in the soup kitchen. I've volunteered for Coal Museum for, well, over 25 years. The museum is 25, 26 years old. I've been there. I started there the year after they opened with Coles, and I volunteered there steady. I keep a book like this. I live with this thing. Because my mind does not work too well sometimes. And if I don't write it down, I might forget it. So I write it down. See, I got you in here, Husson College, 9:30.
So, once you left, you had a pretty decent life after you left the service.
I have a good life. I have no complaints.
What was, if you could look back on your time in the military service, what would you say your biggest take out of it was? The biggest thing that really hit you the most coming out of the military service?
Oh, I don't know. Probably the fact that I helped win this war in a small way. I've done a lot of different things. There's a book that, Quiet Courage. I don't know how many veterans are in that book. Don Colson, you all remember Don Colson? He was a news director and an anchor man for WWII TV for years. And Don interviewed all these veterans in here. I'm in here as a veteran, and I got, I don't know, there's quite a page of stuff in there. Several pages of me in here on my interview. He interviewed me down in Florida. And there's a whole, I don't know how many veterans are in here, but there's a lot of them. He interviewed a pile of them from all the wars. They got Korea, Vietnam, British wars and terrorism, Vietnam, Korea, World War II. I guess that's about it. I've been in all the parades that they've had. I haven't been in a parade that I haven't been in.
So you were in parades. Did you ever get to meet other veterans from like the newer wars, like the Iraq,
Oh yes,
Syria,
yeah.
anything like that?
I've met a lot of them right through Cold Museum. I've met a lot of. I know most of the vets there. Of course, because we meet frequently. They just had a meeting here just recently at Cold Museum. They had a. So that my mind don't work good sometimes. Let me see.
I mean, dates aren't really like we're not specific dates like that.
No.
Isn't that big of a deal. What I'm really after is like, what was it like to meet some of the other people who shared the same military like.
Oh, it's very interesting to hear their stories too, because they're all different. They're all different. We have one man that comes up from Southwest Harbor that's volunteered there for quite a while, and he had a ship shot out from under him. He ended up in the water, the only survivor, and he did survive. Harold Beale, a nice man, and he was World War II, and Norman Rosendahl was another vet. He's World War II, but he'd also been to Europe, so I never was.
What do you think about military service today?
I think it's a wonderful thing. I think any young man or woman, it's a good experience. It teaches discipline. It just builds good character, I think. I really do. I assume now that the military is a lot different than it was when I went in. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. But I still think it's good for any young person for 2, 3, or 4 years. It don't hurt a bit. And they might find they like it. They might find they like it.
Before we conclude, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Oh, no, I don't know of anything. I'll tell you about this hand grenade if you want to hear of it. This thing is, that's, when this pin is pulled, this is the fuse of a hand grenade. That would blow up. This being filled with high explosives would blow also. And this is designed to break apart and go in all these pieces, all go in all directions. It's a horrible piece of ordnance, it really is. But we was always taught on these, on the side of this thing is a number 5 on this one, right there. And it would indicate that this had maybe a 5-second delay fuse. So when this is pulled and this handle, as long as you hold this handle, you're safe. But when you pull this pin and release that handle in 5 seconds, that would blow up. And we was always cautioned when we use these to count off a couple seconds before you threw that. Because they always maintained that 5 seconds is a long time if you're starting to count it. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1000. That's quite a while. So they always maintained if you just pulled that pin and heaved it, there's a pretty good chance they'd have time to pick it up and throw it back at you. That you didn't want to have happen. So you always counted off a couple seconds, 1001, 1002, and then you threw it, and you would be pretty safe. So, and they're heavy. You lift that. And that's empty.
And this is
It'd be heavier.
Solid metal, correct?
Oh yes. And as I say, it's designed to break apart. And it is a horrible piece of ordnance. And I was lucky I never had to use them. I carried them a whole war, but I never had to use them. I was never in the position where I had to use them. And that pleased me too.
So you went through, you went all the way through up the islands. You went over. You were overseas. You had spent time with your family before and after, and now you have a loving family now.
Yes.
Looking back on your time before the war, if you could say anything to yourself then, right this moment now, what would you say?
I'm just saying I'd be lucky. I'm lucky I did what I did. Well, for instance, to give you briefly, if I had done what they wanted me to do and signed up for another hitch, I wouldn't have gone back to high school. I wouldn't have met my wife. We've been married 68 years, come October. I wouldn't have had 2 boys. I wouldn't have had 4 grandchildren. I wouldn't have had 7 or 8 great-grandchildren. All that wouldn't be existed today. Heavens knows where I'd be. And I've thought about that so many times, how lucky I am that I did what I did. Because we have a close family. My granddaughter came up from Portland yesterday. She brought her 2 boys with her to spend the day with us. And my other son, he just got back from a vacation. He was up to Australia for a while, then went to New Zealand. He just got back last week into California to visit my grandson, who lives out in Santa Cruz, California. He and his wife, and they got a year-old little girl. So he's spending a couple of weeks there with them, and he'll be back home here the 18th of this month. He'll be back in Portland again. So, and we're a close family. We do a lot of things together. This next Saturday, my daughter-in-law, my oldest boy's wife, is having a birthday, and we're having a whole gang down at my house for a birthday party for her. And all that wouldn't have existed if I had decided to sign up for another hitch. And so I think I've thought of that so many times, how lucky I am that I did what I did. There's a picture of the rifle I carried that I was issued. That was a Springfield 1903 bolt-action rifle. That was a slow rifle to use because it was, every time you fired that rifle, you had to pull that bolt up, bring it back, eject the shell you just fired, and push forward to put another shell in the chamber. So it was slow, but it was accurate. I fired that Excerpt with that rifle. When I first joined the Marine Corps, my pay was $21 a month. And they deducted 10 cents out of that for something, I don't know what. But I got $20.90 a month when I first joined. Then later on, Congress raised that to 50. And then when I went overseas, I got another $10 to 60. And I got another $5 when I fired Excerpt with a rifle. And then I hadn't been overseas but a short time, and they issued us another rifle, 30 caliber. It took a bullet. It took a bullet like that, right there. That's about the actual size of that bullet, 30 caliber. Called the M1 rifle, which was gas operated, and it was semi-automatic. All you had to do was just pull the trigger. It wasn't automatic, it was just semi-automatic. And that was a good rifle.
Mr. Wilbur, you have an amazing story, and your years throughout the military service was phenomenal, and you were able to do so much and see so much part of the world. And after you left, you became, a grandfather, a great-grandfather, a father, all that jazz. So on behalf of all of us here, we'd like to thank you for your service, and thank you for doing the interview with us.
Well, you're very welcome. I just hope it's worthwhile, that's all. I'm not that good on interviews, but it's interesting. I had things here like this. I read this. When America was plunged into war, the morning of Sunday, December 7th, 1941, history hung in the balance. The forces of tyranny were on the march. Britain and Russia were succumbing to the hammer blows of the Nazi war machine. The Japanese juggernaut in the Pacific appeared unstoppable. And they really did at that time. They did, really. Yet, with the smoke still lingering over Pearl Harbor, America united as never before. Overnight, the American people were resolved to one purpose and one purpose only: final victory. Men, women, young and old, even children had a role. Farm boys, lawyers, accountants, grocery clerks, indeed, men and teenagers from all walks of life joined the armed forces by the millions. Women flooded the shipyards and the factories to produce arms of democracy. Children scavenged for scrap metal and rubber to help out. Everyone knew the stakes were high. Defeat was not an option. The entire nation came together with discipline, courage, and self-sacrifice to achieve a great victory of good over evil. Over 400,000 of our countrymen gave their lives to achieve this victory. The entire nation did its part to see their sacrifices would not be in vain. Today, this greatest generation is passing into the night. The legacy is a legacy of freedom. It's our legacy, one which we should never take for granted. They're running out of World War II veterans. I'm one of the younger ones, and I'm 91, so. Well, I don't know. I'm so glad what I did. If I had to do it all over again, I'd do it again.